Welcome to St. Augustine this evening, the Mike Davis Show. We've got a very special guest with us today. But before we get to that, we've got to do a couple of reads. First of all, we'd like to thank our sponsors at Anastasia and Moultrie Diner. They are absolutely amazing. If you want to go meet your local folks that live in the community that are having breakfast, it's a hometown diner. Go there. I love going there in the mornings. I was at Anastasia Diner this weekend, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So I just want to tell you, go check them out. Yeah. They're great. They're wonderful. They're great sponsors. Also, we have A to Z Roofing and Waterproofing. They've been serving St. Johns County for over 20 years. They offer painted metal roofs for saltwater area homes with warranties up to 25 years, and they offer shingle roofs with warranties up to 50 years. They also install tile roofing, cedar shake shingles, and designer roofing and flat roof coverings. Call Chuck McCone and his staff. They would love to put a new roof on your new or older house if you need a new one. 904-669-8037. And Epic, a brand new sponsor for us that Davey got. Thank you, Davey, for our new sponsors, and thank you, Epic. For over 50 years, they've been a beacon of hope for our community, providing compassionate care for those touched by substance use or mental health disorders. Whether you're a kid, teen, adult, couple, or family, Epic is here to lend a hand. They've got a wide range of programs tailored to meet diverse needs. Epic offers accessible solutions for everyone, from their walk-in access center to their mobile response team. From inpatient detoxification to outpatient counseling, Epic provides comprehensive care every step of the way. Their services include psychiatric evaluations, medication management, medication-assisted treatment, care coordination, peer support, suicide prevention, training, parenting education, and much, much more. Epic, they're there. They're here to help you. A wonderful organization. Nancy Pulpus doing a great job as an executive director.
Absolutely.
All right, and our guest today is someone who has not been back in a while. He was dubbed the Patriot back in the days.
That's right. I keep that.
You're still dubbed the Patriot. Brandon Patty, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
It's good to see you
Pleasure.
again. And you and I were talking, so I was trying to get you on the podcast, and you're running again for Clerk of the Court.
Yes, sir.
You have been the Clerk of the Court since you were appointed in 2019 by the greatest governor in the history of Florida.
I agree.
You didn't even know how good he was when he appointed you.
I did not.
Like his really best days and our best days were ahead of us, thank God.
It was after the appointment. I don't take credit for that,
I know.
I might have started the run.
You might have started his run. It was a really good thing, yes. But we love that you're there. So how are things going in the clerk's office?
It's going phenomenal. We've got a great team, an important mission, and we look forward to, we serve the public every day, our government partners every day with just great customer service, focus on executing our mission and getting the job done.
And you have how many staff?
We're at 120, 125. Over a $16 million budget. It's a big operation. We're 1,000 different functions across county government, across the court system, managing records, all the things. It's a big office, but it's an important one and one that helps contribute here in St. John's.
And you guys made a change at some point in time in the last year or two. I don't know the exact time when. And I will say I don't because I have staff that now goes and records notices of commencements for us. But you can actually make a time, record a time to go walk in and go get this done.
Exactly right.
And it was always just walk in. And honestly, prior to 2020, it was pretty easy. You walk in and walk back out. But then whenever everybody started wanting to travel again and they had to redo their passports, that could slow it down, especially when there's a family of 12 in front of you.
Yeah,
it wasn't 12. It just seemed like 12 the day I was there.
And those passport requirements are onerous, right? Like it requires a lot. So those are some of our more lengthy transactions. And then you close the north end of the courthouse, and that was done by the judiciary for security reasons. And it becomes that much more burdensome for those that are wishing to conduct business. And I personally am not a huge fan of the way we have it laid out now, where you have to go to building and permits, then come to us, and then go back. We are looking at additional ways of streamlining the process, whether it's mobile e-recording or other avenues. One of my key priorities, in addition to protecting taxpayer dollars, is making it easier for our residents and businesses in order to be able to interact with our government. And so we are seeking many different ways. One of the areas coming up are actually walk-up windows. So you don't actually have to enter the complex. You don't have to go through security. Get it taken care of right outside. Saves you 5, 10, 15 minutes.
I would love walk-up windows. Right now, you guys have the best exercise program of any department because you have to go to the south entrance of the courthouse and then you walk all the way to the north end, which is for me is interesting because I remember what all those offices used to be for the last 36 years. I remember when they weren't there and then they were there and then, yeah. So it's kind of interesting to do that walk. But yeah, when the north entrance got closed, I was like, man, they were right there.
And it's one of those too where the recording department is right at the north end. The only way you can get there is to the south. But we have plans for the future. We want to expand throughout the county. We are looking at maybe even having a customer service center that's off-site from the courthouse, so you could get in, get out the same way on the north end next. Yeah. So a lot of opportunity there for us to continue to improve y'all's accessibility, our accessibility to government.
Well, I think in your defense, the things that we're dealing with is, when I first came back from college, there was 85,000 residents in the county. There's now, 350,000? Yeah. So there's a lot more documents that need to be recorded. There's a lot more people that have interaction with your office. And it's complete. And they were annexes at one time, I think, in Ponte Vedra and all the way down on the south part of the county. And those all got closed, which is what governments and business do. We're going to do out parcels. We're going to bring them all back. We're going to do out parcels. We're going to bring them all back, right?
Yeah, we're at Julington Creek, Ponte Vedra for passports. It's one of those where I want to see it fully expanded. I think it's important as a resident. We talk often about, and as a resident, I think that if you interact with government, you should be able to access as many services as reasonably possible in that location versus getting told, "Oh, I'm so sorry, we don't do that here." Like that to me is just the opposite of what we should be up to.
Yeah.
In a representative form of government. And then we're also looking at additional, annex potential opportunities to continue bringing it closer to y'all.
And I think that's one is just because the county's so much bigger and it takes so much longer to. I mean, if you had to 25 years ago leave Julington Creek and come to St. Augustine, there was a certain window to get there. It's a lot harder to do that now just because of traffic and all the extra things that are going on. So, I mean, I think that those are hugely important to be able to do that. But I also know trying to find the space, trying to find the staffing for it, what are the hours for it, it's not easy.
You got to train them up. Exactly right. And then, by the way, in addition to that, we are helping manage the county's budget. We are making sure that dollars are being spent with public purpose. We're auditing. We're conducting investigations on the Inspector General side. We're supporting the court system, managing evidence, going back to the financials, managing the county's investments, a litany of different activities. And it's one of those that require just strong leadership in order to make sure that we have the right people in the right seats, that we're staying accountable, and we're maintaining what we call in the office taxpayer standards, which are the standards that you and we all demand as taxpayers. And that requires a heightened level of diligence and accountability, transparency, a lot of fun.
Have you had a lot of turnover? I mean, there's a lot of departments that I'm watching people that I've worked with for a long time, partly because I'm old, much older than you and Amanda. And I'm watching people that work there for a long time retiring. So are you running through some of, having to replace some really good qualified workers?
We are, and across the state, there are 67 different clerk offices, right? One per county. Collectively, we're all going through generational change. So I think when I first came in, we were roughly at about 14 years of service. We're right at about 7 right now. So we had pretty significant turnover, though we've also had office growth. So the numbers are somewhat skewed. But what you would have seen, what you can see is that we had staff that had been there for 20, 30 years that were retiring, and that really changes the average. And so we talk often with our younger staff, like, hey, we want to be your last job. We want you to have that career here. So, we're going to fight for your compensation. We're going to fight to ensure we attract and retain the best talent. We're going to have the best workplace to be in. We're going to have opportunities for you to grow. If you're in the reporting department for a few years and you're like, hey, I want to try my hand in court, let's see if we can make that happen. So we're always looking for ways in order to engage, because once we get somebody in, and it takes a lot of investment to bring in staff, but once they're in and we train them, we want them to stay with us. That as you know, that turnover, that transition of staff, that's where you can lose some of the quality and the focus on the mission.
Oh, no, 100%. I mean, that's part of, our business is 70 years old this year. So surviving for 70 years, you're constantly trying to retrain, you're constantly trying to find new people, and it's very difficult, and the times change, right? I mean, the qualifications that we were looking for in someone 70 years ago is completely different today, right? I mean, you still have carpentry skills and those things, but being able to use the phone, do email, to be able to cut and paste stuff and send message. I mean, thanks to smartphones, it's a completely different world of managing stuff in the field. You're dealing with that same stuff in your office where, it was very difficult to record things, get copies back. Now, I mean, You walk in, you hand it to them, you get it right back. It's incredible how quick some of this stuff is.
And a big part of that too, and this is with the turnover, is that we demand quality. Because as that taxpayer standards, it's ensuring that our interests are maintained. And if someone that we bring in or someone that's there is not able to meet that, we will do everything we can to help them find success. But if they're not a good fit, they're not a good fit. And I'm not going to keep somebody, we're not a jobs program. I'm not going to keep somebody on staff just because. We have to make sure that we are making the right decision no matter the cost. And I've got a track record of that over the last 4 years of being able to ensure that, hey, if we need to take an action or if someone's not a good fit, we're not going to keep them on just because. We're going to make sure that the public's interest is maintained always.
So how's we talked a little bit before the show, budget process going? Because we're in budgeting now for the county. So how is all of that going with your office?
It is going very well with the county side. So we have 3 primary funding sources, and there are more. We have trust funds, but the 3 that we pay the most attention to, we pay attention to them all, but the most attention to is from the county, and that pays for our county functions, so the comptroller, IG's office, minutes and records team. And there's the court side, which is funded by the state, and that is just a very complex, opaque process, one that I've been focused on trying to ensure that we get our fair share. As it is right now, we don't. We are one of the least funded court systems in the state for the clerk side, and so I fight very hard for us in Tallahassee to ensure that we have that in order to attract and retain the best talent. And then our recording revenues generated from those fees, passports, marriage licenses, and so forth. So with the county, met with all the commissioners last week and the week before. Great meetings, very positive. They see the good work that our team does, and they recognize that in order for us to continue to attract and retain the top talent, we have to make sure that we can keep up with inflation, and that we can help provide the best working conditions and so forth. And one of my priorities is ensuring that we match county with their salary and their COLA increases. And so the commissioners have all been very open to that, and so I look forward to earning their support in June.
Well, and I think that's a really one of the harder things at the county level. In businesses, I think we react quicker to the ups and the downs. I think county, state, and federal is a lot slower to react to that. And when we're in what I would consider a hyperinflation period right now, where it's just hard to keep up. I mean, if you gave your people raises, the raise could be gone due to inflation before you ever get to the 6-month mark of the new year.
And that's where I've been very grateful to our county commission and to the county admin, in that they have leaned forward to helping the county staff keep up with inflation. As I said, it's a little bit different just how we budget, whereas some of our staff might be 50-50 between court and county, and that's how their salary comes together, their compensation comes together. We have to keep an eye on both, and then also on the recording side. So it's a very complex budgeting experience, but it's one where we are just committed to our mission and ensuring that we have the right people there to take care of it. The other side of that too, Mike, is that our office, in conjunction with the commission and county admin about 4 years ago, became the only county in the state of Florida that has a restricted reserve line at county. So when we used to send recording surplus back to county, it would just go into the general revenue. Now it goes to a restricted line. So hopefully that'll help us weather future storms. And again, it comes down to, we got to do our job. Our mission can't fail. If we're not there, court doesn't happen. If we're not there, the county's bills don't get paid. And so we need to make sure that we have that redundancy in place. And so I'm confident that, looking at and thinking through of ways of having that redundancy will ensure that if and when, because the economy is cyclical,
it doesn't matter of time until it slows down again, right? I mean, you can't go through history and say, well, it's never slowed down. Yeah, it slows down all the time. Somebody usually messes something up in the banking industry, no offense to our banking friends, or the stock market, or real estate speculation, and then it takes us, it takes the economy offline for several years. We work our way back, and then somebody figures out a new scheme that busts us up again.
Well, and I feel like you start getting close when you start hearing, oh, this can go on forever.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I'm like, oh gosh, here we go.
I'm still in therapy over that saying from 2007, right? I mean, it's 20 years, and I'm still fighting through that process.
And Florida is just notorious for it. But every time we get to the height of it, it's over. No.
I had some realtor tell me during the last downturn, he said, I should have known better. I've been in the industry for 40 years, and every time the condo market gets really hot is when it's about to break. And I saw the condo market get hot 3 years ago. I just wasn't paying attention again. So I don't think the condo market this time is going to do it, but I mean, it's just sort of, you do have this crazy run up in pricing for food, for housing, for rent, for all of those things. And if you're trying to keep people employed here in St. Johns County, that they're not a retiree coming here with some nest egg, it's really hard to do. I mean, workforce housing is basically non-existent in our county right now. And those are all the people that work for you and work for me.
And it's one where, I think eventually it'll balance out, but how long and at what cost? What cost to the human cost, if you will, but what cost economically and all of that.
Yep.
It's such a tough problem to really crack, and ultimately, to your point, the external factors that really played a part in this, the mass migration, all of that has been just a very unique set of dynamics that has put us in a tough position.
Yeah,
Very tough position.
Yes, if the school board was here, they'd be jumping up and down going, yes. I talked to somebody the other day and said one of the schools, there's not a lot of space, and they will have double-decker portable classrooms.
Really? I've never
Yes.
seen those before.
They just do not have enough room to spread them out, so they're going vertical.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, what's interesting about that too is, I don't know about you, but when I went to elementary school back in the 80s and early 90s, we had portables. My first grade was in a portable, right? But a lot of folks that are moving from out state, they see portables and they're going, I've never seen these before. They're
That's
just
weird.
blown away. Yeah, and so there's all this talk online about, we gotta get rid of the portables, and we're like, this is like, it's just been a product of life. I mean, it's just been here in Florida, it's like alligators.
Well, the area in the middle part of the county that has grown so much, they build a school, they build it for X number of kids, they're building it for an expansion number. And then whenever you have the blow up of 2021 and 2022, with all the people moving here, you can't keep up with that.
Right.
It's not, I mean, it's not physically possible to do that. So you kind of look through that. But yeah, what was your first school?
Gilchrist Elementary in Tallahassee.
In Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's just kind of a Florida thing. It's like, yeah, we have to add on. It's just the way we do. We're not these big cities that don't have schools that are surplus schools.
And I was flying up to Chicago every month for Navy drill, and I drove by Lake Forest High School. It is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, right? And so, actually, a member of my senior team, his sister went to school there, and not a portable in sight, but it's just, they've been in the school district for 200 years,
Yeah.
and they've had it built up and all of that, and whereas we're still playing catch up, and then you pour the gasoline on the fire with the mass migration, and it's not like the old video game SimCity where you can just drop a school and have at it. It takes years. You got to go through all the process.
So do you have any, with new people moving here and trying to get all of their stuff recorded, do you have any issues with that? Have you been able to help people through processes? Do you have some people that come from different states and go, wow, this is the easiest I've ever had to do this?
We thankfully, and I give all credit to staff, we get a ton of compliments from staff. I mean, and really, I think a great example, just because it's where we all go, is the DMV, right? So the DMV before it was elected was one thing, and that's how it is up north, and then the tax collector, which is now the DMV, effectively,
Yes.
completely different ballgame. And why? Because the head of the office is elected.
Yep.
We know who our boss is. The boss can make a change every 4 years,
Yeah.
unless they do something really bad, then it could be sooner. But then and so having that focus on customer service, it makes all the difference, and it contributes to our quality of life.
Yeah, we're going to lose the guy that fixed the DMV, right? Dennis Holly. If you went to the DMV before Dennis and the tax collector took it over, it was not a lot of fun.
Yeah, up north, the northern example carried here, carried across the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jennifer, she's doing a really great job. I mean, we've been working with her closely over the years, and are excited to see her take on the opportunity. Hopefully, she gets through unscathed, and she'll be serving in that role for years to come.
Yeah. Dennis has been the tax collector, I think, in St. Johns County since I was in middle school.
84, right?
Yes. Well, 84, I would have been in high school, so yeah.
He was at the office before that for a little bit, right?
He was, yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, I think
84.
in the chat they were talking about him, so I looked it up. He celebrated 40 years of service in 2018. So that was the announcement I saw.
See, middle school. Middle school. That was a long time ago. I remember holding signs for him. He's the first person I think I politically campaigned.
Stop.
Yes. Yep. 100%.
That's some good trivia right there.
That's some
Mike.
good trivia.
That's some good trivia.
He was actually my 6th grade teacher before he went to work in the tax
That's even better
collector's
trivia.
office. Yes. Yep. No. Just crazy that he's been there and done a great job. But
He has.
See, you only have 30 years left to go. You can do this.
I'll tell you, that working in the clerk and comptroller's office is really an honor of a lifetime. I understand why. Opportunity to serve a cause greater than yourself, the opportunity to be part of the solution. I'm just grateful for the last 5 years and hope to continue it.
Yeah, I think St. Johns County is blessed. We got some very, very good constitutional officers and have for some time. So not every county is as lucky as we are. I'm very, very happy about that and include you in that.
Thank you.
You do have kind of an announcement. You're in the middle of an election cycle, but you're getting ready to make some changes.
Not voluntary changes.
Not voluntary
changes.
However, answering the call changes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, yes, in early December, received the call from the U.S. Navy that I'm being involuntarily mobilized, and completely unexpected. I thought they were calling about an overdue travel voucher, so I answered the phone. I'm so sorry, and like, no, sir. So I'm preparing for that deployment, for that mobilization coming up. I actually go on order starting at the end of the week. So I've spent the last 5 months preparing the office, preparing the family, and getting ready to go out the door.
And can you tell us where you're going to be going roughly, approximately?
Middle East.
Okay.
So all expenses paid trip to the Middle East. And so the plan is for about 6 months, 7 months total. So should be back near the end of the year. And really, I'm getting to the place now where you go through just a range of emotions without a doubt. And anytime you have these you get these calls, which you sign up to do, it's an honor to serve in uniform, even more so to get called to serve overseas. So I look forward to doing my service, playing my part, and coming home.
But you've got a wife and 3 boys.
Yep.
So that's a lot to leave.
That's where it starts.
That's
where it gets right here.
A lot to leave. You don't get those days back. So thank you for your service, and thank you for going and doing that, because that is a huge sacrifice, not just the work side of it, but more importantly, the family side. So really appreciate the fact that you are willing to go do it.
Well,
so thank you.
It's my honor. It's my pleasure. We've got a lot of folks in this community that go out the door routinely. Guardsmen, reservists, active duty. So to be able to go out and get called, get your name called, and be able to do your part. I tell this pretty often. Like, we're a proud Navy family. Like, we're proud. We're about to pay the bill, and so that's one where it starts hitting a little bit, but it's also going through that experience is going to make us that much stronger. It's going to help set the example to our boys and family, and just to be able to have that opportunity to show sacrifice it's an honor.
No, I really, really appreciate that. And can you tell us anything about what your duties are going to be when you get over there?
So my understanding is it's going to be an office job. It's going to be 6 days a week, 7 days a week.
Thank God it's not an outside job in the Middle East. I don't know if you've looked at the weather, Brandon.
Well, I've been going to Bahrain now for the last roughly, 7-8 years. And yeah, the summer is pretty hot and humid.
Yes.
So it's not that Arizona dry heat.
No.
It is there's one day I was getting ready to go to base. It was 7 a.m. and looked out the window, and the condensation was just overwhelming. And it was 100 degrees outside. I was like, oof, next time I'm coming back in the winter.
Have you been there in the winter?
Not to where I'm going, but yes. I started trying to plan my annual trainings to being at least it started being like October to May, and then 2019 we had a surge of support out there. It was after the Iranians took down the Global Hawk, so I led a detachment of personnel out there, and that was in July, and that was one of those where it was July 2nd. We started seeing traffic, and that there was going to be a call for volunteers. Talked to the wife. She was like, if you need to go, go. I'm like, and it was July 2nd. I'm like, Mike, there's no way I'm going to get mobilized over the 4th of July. Let's enjoy our hot dog eating contest and celebrate the 4th. Orders came down. Next day, we were getting ready to get on a plane and head over. And thankfully, it didn't turn into a shooting war, but it was hot.
Yeah.
It was hot.
Full credit. That is in my mind, the most dangerous region in the world, right? It's not, especially with what happened in the last 24, 36 hours. The Iranians lose a helicopter that has their president and several other high-ranking government officials. I always first looked at it, I said, well, is it the Israelis? Is it us?
Yeah.
Is it just a mechanical failure, right? Act of God. What was it, act of God, that caused all this? And when the U.S. comes out and says right away, there's a statement, it was mechanical failure, or was something that I'm like, man, that was quick, right? That's like, because you like waited a couple days, condolences in the first PR thing before you got, and we'll never know. I mean, what actually happened to it. I mean, they're always, that's the problem with an area, to me, an area like that that's so intense with emotion. Depending on who you are, you can spin that any way you want to serve your needs. Right?
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, the mountains are real, the fog was real, so we hear. To your point, they do some pretty different intelligence services. They do some pretty crazy stuff, exotic stuff as it relates to electromagnetic, and you look at satellites and all the things. And then when you think like, okay, well, why would you take out the Iranian president? So let's say that it was a third party that decided to try to assassinate or did assassinate, and then the others that were on board as well. You know, I don't know if they have the same level of operational influence as, say, the IRGC commander when we took out Soleimani back in the late 2010s, 2020. But nonetheless, it still has a dramatic impact on their leadership, and it'll be interesting to see how that spins out, because that Iranian president, he was really the leader of the suppression of the civil unrest in Iran over the last 5 years. So to see him be even more hardline than Rouhani, who was there, is significant. And so then who steps into that place? So they continue that path forward. I know they have an interim president, 60 days. I believe they have to have another election.
Well, I read it. I didn't see it, so I can't take it other than I read it somewhere. Is that there were kind of jubilant people in the streets when the news hit.
Right. So
it's a populace that really is longing for freedom. They've been suppressed for 40 some years, and so I you have to wonder when that cap comes off of the bottle, right?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, and you talk about it's a theocratic state. It's a revolutionary power in that it wants to overthrow the world order, so to speak. You look at old photos of Tehran back in the early 70s when it was under the Shah. I mean, it was beautiful. Like, and then once the hardliners got in there, it's a jail state. I mean, it's.
And I thought a lot about this morning. I knew you were coming on, so it's kind of just thinking as I was driving. I thought, we always have this romanticized version in our minds of, well, before the religious leaders took over, it was so much better. And you're like, well, they did have a plea. It was, yes, the Shah was there, but it probably was not the greatest state in the world.
Right.
If you were in the opposition, you had no rights. Bad things were happening to you then. It just looked better from a Western standpoint. I'm like coming to grips with it. Might not have been as good as what we think it was. Obviously, it's better than where they are now, and it wasn't a state sponsor of terror around the world, which has caused incredible harm to a lot of people and places.
American blood's on their hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so, I'm always very interested to see how long you can keep the lid on that when people yearn for freedom. And you just wonder, when's the one thing, the crack in the dam that's going to cause that to break? And then all of a sudden they can't control it.
And when it happens, it goes, right? And so, but what we have seen is, like, with the advance of technology, that it has gotten easier to suppress and control a population in some ways. Now, in others, they might be able to use WhatsApp and some of these other messaging. But then you look what happened to Turkey, right? When there was the potential coup a few years ago, and using Instant Messenger and using all the various forms, and they were still able to suppress it. It's fascinating to see. Sadly, in some ways, just about how technology really can help imprison a population, while also potentially giving an opportunity for those to help organize and be able to potentially affect them.
I think if you're smart enough to outsmart the government, right? So, and I look at the prime example was Reagan and the Pope in Poland in the 80s, right? So what device did they give to the resistance in Poland? They gave them fax machines.
Okay.
Right?
I didn't know that.
They gave them fax machines because the Soviets didn't have fax machines. And they had no way to decipher the clicks and groans between the fax machines. So they write a note, fax it, right? And the Soviet spies are listening. They can't figure out what all this noise is because they had a fax machine. So they were able to communicate, hey, we all need to be at this area to protest at this time. Make sure you disseminate this information out. And they were able to get that information across telephone lines. And the Soviets had no idea what was going on.
He's bringing it today. I did not know that. That was good.
I study some stuff. So if you could do that, but I do think that governments have worked really, really hard. If you look at the suppression of information that went on in our own country, right, on our own social media platforms for a whole variety of things. Butker, the kicker for Kansas City, if you Google his name on Amazon, it will not bring his name up. Wow. Or if you search his name, it will bring up a whole bunch of, which is basically someone at Amazon deciding they do not want you to find out information about him or where you can buy his shirt or whatever. That's suppression, right? Yeah. That is an overt suppression of somebody's views. And that's scary that it's that easy to do.
Sure.
But we have concentrated that power. I mean, I don't know what I just did to our... Did I say Threads was good today?
Threads is amazing.
Threads is amazing.
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is amazing
Mark
too.
Zuckerberg is so great. Did we mention that today? Yeah, so you just have to really be careful what you say. Yeah, it's just, it's to me, that's just kind of crazy.
People are losing their mind about that kicker, though, because all of the female jerseys are sold out. And people are losing their mind about it. Like, he said such wildly offensive things towards women, whatever, but all of his female jerseys are sold out.
Number one jersey sale right now in the NFL.
Yeah.
Number one. And I plan on watching I either got to watch that
I haven't seen the speech.
I'm going to watch the entire thing before we come on with Davey tomorrow. And I also have to watch that stupid movie. What's the name of that movie I have to watch?
The Women.
I'm going to fast forward that one. I'm going to get the cliff notes on it.
Double speed.
Well, we have this movie watching, and we did Gone in 60 Seconds. But not the Gone in 60 Seconds for Nicolas Cage. We had to do the 1970s version, which
was bad?
No, it's actually really good. It's like the first independent film ever made.
Okay.
And so it's just like a stunt driver who just wanted to make a movie with his family. So it's actually really interesting to see it and the way it was made. And the car chases are insane because it's a stunt driver who just had free reign to do whatever he wanted without a director reining him in. And so it's like a 45-minute car chase.
It's a 45-minute car chase at the end of an hour and probably 20-minute movie. And the first 40 minutes of the movie, the dialogue is usually done with somebody
stilted.
Facing away from the camera.
Okay.
Right? So you could see they just ran through the action scenes and then they dubbed the dialogue over top of it. There are kung fu movies that have a better sequencing of the lips moving
voice
and
to
the
mouth
voice
syncing.
over.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, wow, those guys in the kung fu were so good. I just didn't realize. But you kind of get through this rough dialogue of it, and it does have an interesting ending to it, but it is just such a funny kind of movie to watch. Basically, the police, all 700 of them that were chasing this guy and couldn't catch him, eventually all became stormtroopers. Right? They had to be. Because you couldn't catch the guy, and you couldn't have hit anybody with a blaster if you wanted to. I mean, they were that bad at it. But
that's awesome.
It was pretty interesting. So, who were you leaving in charge of the office? Who's going to run? Who's your number 2, number 3? Who's running it?
Yes. So, per Florida statutes, I was required to submit for a leave of absence, which I understand has been approved by the governor. I'm waiting on the official letter back. And in that statute, I also have to appoint a designee in order to carry out the duties that I'm not able to perform by not being present here. So we have our Chief of Technology, John Rundgren. He's going to step into that role, take it on starting on Friday. Great guy, great senior leadership team, and they're just going to help ensure that we're able to steady as she goes through the end of the year.
Yeah.
How long's he been with you?
Gosh, he's been at the office, I want to say 2016. He's been with me from the beginning, from 2019. He was originally our technology manager, and we bumped him up to a chief. So he's been our chief information officer since then, and he's done a great job of helping protect our office and protect our team. As you know, cyber attacks, cyber security, we get hit all the time, and government's one of those where, to your point earlier about being able to keep up with the economic churn, government tends to be, even though it's picking up, thankfully, meetings starting to meet a lot more of the standards on the cyber side of things, being able to help protect those dollars.
Well, as somebody who's interacted with the county for a long time, right? So it was groundbreaking whenever on the internet they published people's phone numbers. And then it was groundbreaking when they gave us your emails. And then all of a sudden, all the emails were gone. Probably, I want to say like 2019. They were gone. And I finally got a hold of somebody. I'm like, what happened to all the emails? I said, it's harder for me. I used to be able to email, and if I had the old email, right, I was still good. And so it was the cyber threat. It was people inadvertently opening something that they shouldn't have opened. And you had so many employees, and the people that were trying to hack into the county were just like, well, there's 1,000 email addresses. All we got to hope is one of the 1,000 people hits the wrong button and opens our attachment, and we're in their system.
We got to get it right 100% of the time.
Yep.
They only have to get it right once.
Yeah.
And so it is a growing problem across the state. We've been leading the charge here in St. Johns County, bringing in a third-party vendor management solution. We've also helped work to bring in just other kind of safeguards in order to help prevent any other additional sort of being a victim of cyber fraud. We're forthright about it. We got hit last year with a cyber fraud event. We're still working through that. We immediately called law enforcement. We've been able to recover over 50% of the dollars, and we're ensuring that not only does it never happen again in St. Johns County, but that we help prevent it from happening in any county in the state of Florida, and so across the country. And so I'm just grateful for the sheriff's office for the support they provided on that investigation. And in helping us ensure that we're able to figure out what happened and be able to prevent it going forward in the future.
And they're great at some of the stuff they come up with. I mean, it'll be someone's name that you know. It'll be in an email. You have to look at about 6 different. I mean, in our office, we're all like, hey, unless it matches these 6 things, there's no need to reply, open, or do any of that.
And we're trying to spread the word on the private sector side too, because title companies are getting hit with this, law firms and so forth. Because what the hackers will do is they'll get in with the vendor and they'll watch the traffic go back and forth. And then once they see that, hey, send me an invoice, send me this, or send me a request for payment, they will insert themselves. And so instead of it being est.com, it's es.t.com, same name, pull it from LinkedIn, and it's sometimes difficult to detect, especially if it goes through multiple intermediaries, which is what happened with us at the county. And ultimately, but it leads to a place where we had to find somebody that could help us lean into the threat, and we did. And so this third-party solution, one, they indemnify us up to $2 million per incident. Number 2, they use cutting-edge technology in order to be able to stay ahead of those EFT changes, and hopefully it will, and I'm confident they will, help us prevent that next iteration when the scammer's like, you know what if we do this?
Well, and that we had an interesting one. I think it was last year, where we always get paid with a check. We very rarely do an electronic transfer. And so one of our clients got a call and said, hey, we're not getting our mail. We need you to go ahead and send this electronic transfer to us. And he calls. And we think it had happened because there was an email chain involved in approving this invoice. There were multiple people that saw the invoice to approve it. So it happened somewhere in that chain that someone got a hold of, that hacked into somebody and all, because none of our other clients sent us that message. But we had to send an email out to every single client that we had worked with in the last few years and said, if you get a message like this, disregard the message. This is where you mail the checks to, right? This is how we do this. And we haven't changed that policy. We're not changing that policy. Continue to do it the way we've always done.
And it makes you wonder too, if these scammers are that creative and that innovative, how much good could they do instead of trying to take advantage of everybody?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's one of those where it's a fact of life now, unfortunately, and we just have to try to stay one step ahead.
My favorite is my Facebook friends that are traveling overseas and have lost everything and need an airline ticket back. And I'm like, I just had lunch with this guy yesterday. I'm pretty sure he's not overseas.
Well, and how much they've evolved, right? It was the Nigerian prince for a while there, which became like the running joke, and now it's, and then when you start bringing in AI, you start bringing in the voice AI, where they can start copying your voice. I mean, it is spooky, creepy, scary stuff.
You know, the only American to be able to hoodwink Nigerians? Jussie Smollett. You have to think about it. It's the only American to hoodwink some Nigerians. All the rest of us have been taken advantage of.
So I work for a church, and scammers evidently search the church's Facebook and their website. And so I get emails all the time from fake email addresses, purportedly my boss at the church, the head pastor. And, I just need a couple of minutes of your time. I'm stuck in a meeting. Please go get these gift cards for me.
Yes.
Like, come on. I get them every week.
And what's crazy?
Every week.
It's
Block them.
you detect it, right?
Yeah.
But there's obviously some people that aren't.
One person.
Because and so it's perpetual, and they don't even have to get that good. They just have to be good enough to be able to get a few folks. So we have that scam that we're fighting against. Another one that we're fighting against is property fraud. So this is a growing crime. There have been cases in St. Johns County where residents, unbeknownst to them, their property is getting taken from them. It's getting recorded at our office, and they have to undo, or their property gets sold from underneath them. And we in our office.
Yep.
Go ahead.
How long does it take you to undo that?
It's hard to speak specifically, but it can take months.
Okay.
Because from our office perspective, we're ministerial. So you could come into the office and say, Brandon, this is a fraudulent quitclaim deed. I need you to record it. And I could look at it and say, look, if it's legally sufficient, we are required by law to record it. And that's just the way our form of recording is set up. We're working on it in Tallahassee. We're working with other clerks to fix it. But it's one of those where it's a very scary crime that is growing. And so in our office, what we have is we have a recording activity notification service. It allows residents, business owners to be able to put in their information, and if there's ever a document recorded against you, whether it's a deed, a lien, or any of those types of recording documents, you get an email notification that says, hey, this has been recorded. If it's legit, great, no worries. If not, you give us a call, we can get you the additional details, and you can take that to law enforcement. We're looking at expanding that scope as well. I want to get us to text messages, and quite honestly, I want to get it to where, especially on the very high risk ones, to where we drop a postcard in the mail to the mailing address that's on that property, because there are many of our residents, as you all know, that don't have email address access.
Yeah.
So really trying to lean into this to help prevent St. Johns County residents from being taken advantage of. And it's just so important, because when you hear these horror stories, it's just
So what's happening? Are people filing paperwork as if a sale has taken place?
Exactly.
Oh, that's wild.
Yep. And so what can happen as well is, so let's say that Mike's got some lovely property, and I'm the scammer. I get the quitclaim deed filled out. I go to let's say a fake notary who notarizes. Maybe it's a notary from out of state. Maybe it's a notary that's not necessarily known in. Looks legit. All looks legally sufficient. Brings in, recorded. Now I own it. And now maybe I go sell it to somebody else. And now by the time it all gets figured out, I just made hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's crazy.
And now it's up to law enforcement to have to undo, and you have to go to civil court. It's quite honestly, it's disgusting as a crime.
So you're fighting to bring the death penalty back from this. Right?
That and many other things.
Oh no, that stuff, that the whole theft of that just bothers the heck out of me. Right? People have worked really, really hard for whatever they have, their money, their house, their cars, and you're like you said, you're obviously creative enough to make money at something. Go do something that helps someone. I mean, I had Irish, you had mentioned Facebook, old elderly gentleman in his 90s, all of a sudden messages me out of the blue on Facebook. Never messaged me before. Hey, what are you doing today? I'm like, turn on the live stream feed from church and let's see if this elderly gentleman is in church. And sure enough, he's in the front row of church. And I said, well, this should be a fun conversation. So, I was thinking of going to church today. Are you going to church? Are we going to meet there? Oh, I don't know if I can make it to church today. I said, you lying sack of, you're at church. The real you is at church. And you really ought to be ashamed of yourself for trying to defraud somebody who's over 90 years old. Go find a real job to do.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, this is just disgusting. Now, granted, the guy deleted the message and moved on, but I felt a lot better about letting him know that he was not a nice person.
The newest one that we
that.
have going on, because again, I'm admin over a lot of Facebook pages, are these people with fraudulent accounts that are private messaging women in our church. And so it'll be the exact same copy and paste message as a reply to a comment they left on one of our church live streams. And it's just like, I'm lonely and I'm looking for a friend. I hope that you'll accept my friend request. And it's like, there's only so much I can do. It's happened. These people have contacted at least a dozen women in the past 2 weeks in our church. It's wild. Like, go get a job.
It's not good. All right, speaking of things that are not good, that are legal, have you been watching the Trump trial at all?
I have not. I've paid attention to it just through the news, but not minute by minute. OJ Simpson stuff.
I haven't watched it minute by minute, and usually I don't ever talk about this stuff until it's completely over. But this one has been interesting. The latest out of it today is that Michael Cohen admitted on the stand that he had defrauded and stolen money from the Trump organization.
Wow. Wow, I did not see
Yeah, that was on today because they asked him about a bill. He billed the Trump organization $50,000 for reimbursement. The actual cost was 20, and so it's like I don't know why in the world they put a guy like this on that has been caught lying multiple times, and you're like, this is the guy that's going to do the job against Trump. No, it's just I looked at that headline. I was like, I don't think that's going to work.
And I'll say this: whenever Democrats or whenever those that seem to try to come after Trump, to your point, that's the best you got.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
I mean, it feeds the narrative. It destroys the trust that much further, and it's just ultimately not helpful to get us back to where we need to be. It's just sad. It's sad to see it.
Did you see Barbara Jean ask for the link?
Yes, Barbara Jean has a question. She wants to know what's the link to check on properties to make sure they haven't been skirted out from under us.
So we'll get that posted in the chat if that's okay. No,
Yep.
Obviously, I'm a guest. I can't.
Yep.
But it's on our website, stjohnsclerk.com, recording activity notification. You can just put your information in there, or I'll also put my cell phone in the chat as well. If you want to give me a call and say, hey, Brandon, can you record this? Here's my email. No issue. It's a free service. Happy to do it for as many emails as possible. We're trying to spread the word as much as we can.
Okay.
And that's not just for St. Johns County. Your listeners that are outside of here, every other county also offers this in the region.
Awesome.
We partnered with the other clerks in Northeast Florida in order to have a unified campaign and approach to help spread the word, because this is such an important effort to get the word out on.
And your role in the military has been intelligence.
Yes, sir.
gathering. So you and I have had some really interesting discussions on Ukraine. This has gone on longer than anybody thought it would go on, right? Everyone thought this would be a much quicker war. Take on it after 2 years.
Well, it's been, for a while there, it was a stalemate. Now Russia's on the march. I mean, to what we were talking about earlier. Russia, they have, in many cases, almost inexhaustible supply of manpower and equipment, just being as large of a country that they are. To what end is this inevitable that it would have been here? Is it inevitable that it's going to be just a war of attrition? And then what does that mean? I mean, when you start looking at like the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, out there saying, look, I'm getting classified reports that are helping indicate just what level of threat this is to other European countries. I have to take that at face value as someone who has some of those accesses and who understands and sees the professionalism and so forth that goes into it. One, but then two, the other side to it too, Mike, is let's say Russia starts meddling in Latvia. That's a NATO partner. Now you're potentially talking about Article 5. Now you're talking about a world war. And so where do you draw that line? Should we be fighting them there, or should we wait till Russia continues advancing? I know this is a long-winded answer, and I'm sorry, but that's also where Putin has he wants to restore the glory of the Russian Empire, and that is Ukraine and other countries as well.
Well, and you and I have agreed on when Putin is a really bad person, right? But how do you stop that without getting us into a world war? I mean, what's the threshold, right? Obviously, once a NATO partner is attacked, Article 5 comes in, and you expect that to then go rather quickly south, so to speak. So, but you look at this, and we had a demographics expert on probably 6 months after the war started. He said this could be the last war that these two countries fight.
Wow.
Because they are wiping out. Both countries have a birth rate below 2. So they're below the 2.1 that you have to continue the same population. And now they are wiping out the youngest members of their society, which are there to repopulate. So he said, if there's another war in 10 years, who's going to fight it on the Ukrainian side, because they're not going to have anybody left to fight.
Yeah.
My issue is Ukraine. If you went and looked at them pre-war, they were the greatest exporter of so many different products to Europe and the rest of the world, and this war has completely ruined that country. It will take them a long time to be able to replace what they had. They're free. They want to be free. I get all that. I'm 100% support that, but I don't know that we have fought this the best way. I don't know that we worked hard enough to keep from getting into this. I think there were a lot of people that thought, well, Russia's a paper tiger, and we can beat them. And I do agree with you. The biggest advantage the Russians had is they're a lot bigger country than Ukraine.
Right.
They have access to a lot more resources, and they're selling oil all over the place, probably on the black market. It hasn't hurt the Russian economy to the level people thought that it would hurt the Russian economy.
And I hate to say it, but I think a lot of it does go back to the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the look that American leadership was feckless and wasn't going to stand and was weak, and that did lead to, I believe, contributed to Putin's rationale in order to try to take Ukraine, and he went straight at it. I mean, what's crazy about it, Mike. I don't know if it's been like this for you, but over the last 4 years, we've watched 2 wars on TV in real time. Right, the march from Russia to Kiev, and then the Iranian strike on Israel. Was that last month?
Yeah,
it's blurring together now, right?
Yep, so last month.
And so to see this and to see just how warfare has changed from being the sort of big army movements of mechanized and then combined arms to these drones that are just wreaking destruction to missile defense systems and all of it. It's been fascinating. It's also scary.
So a couple of things on that. The one, let's do drones first, right? So probably 4 or 5 years ago, I said, if you don't have warehouses full of drones that are set for the next World War, you are toast.
Wow.
Because it is a cheap way to deliver ordnance wherever you want to. How many drones could you build for one bomb?
Oh.
Thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Yes, and that's been some of the discussion that's been happening in the defense community is 2 things. The last thought with how much warfare has changed, but yet it's somewhat maintained the same. We got trench warfare going on in Ukraine.
Yep.
And then number 2, you have the Houthis firing rockets, firing drones to Israel, and we're shooting them down with missiles that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it costs them what?
Yeah.
And so that's when you start looking at directed energy weapons, and you start looking at these other vehicles in order to be able to provide anti-missile defense or anti-drone defense. But it's such a game of cat and mouse now. And to your point, they're just so economical, and they wreak so much havoc.
There's some low-tech options in warfare now that weren't there 10 years ago.
Yes.
And to me, the one that is this drone, right? And the other one is you look at these automated dogs that are bouncing around right now, right? And they look cute because they look like a dog, but when they make them out of titanium and they put a rocket launcher on top or some type of gun that fires, which I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen the videos, right? Right. I tell my friends that are Second Amendment guys, I said the Second Amendment counts until that knocks on your door. Right. At that point in time, we really, unless you have a rocket launcher as well, unless you can reload quickly, right? So when I look at those, I look at that as the future of warfare, and if you're not investing in that, we're in trouble. Because if our opponents do, you're not fighting humans anymore, you're fighting just a whole sea of these drones. The other one for me is, and I've said this for a long time, the Ukrainian war, the biggest winner in the Ukrainian war is China.
Okay.
The United States is bleeding its financial resources to support the Ukrainians. We are going into debt to support people. The Ukrainians are losing manpower in a country over this. The Russians are losing manpower. The Chinese are giving the Russians weapons to test in a battlefield that they're like, well, it doesn't matter to us. We're not losing troops if the weapons don't work.
Yeah.
The Russians are glad to have them. So the Chinese have less invested in this. 2 of their adversaries, the United States and Russia, are getting weaker because of it. And the Chinese are just sitting there waiting.
And that's a very scary thought when you add in, you're talking about the replacement rate of a population and how China has gone over the cliff. They're having population decline.
Yes.
And so with the Communist Party still in charge there, do they then make a bold move of trying to take Taiwan in order to be able to stay in power? And if that happens, then that's a whole other ballgame altogether. Now, the good news on that is it's a naval confrontation primarily, so it's not necessarily like what's going on in Ukraine with more of land warfare, but nonetheless, we will be at war. And depending on who you talk to, there's a projection of by about 2027, China will be ready to make a move against Taiwan. And so we need, as the United States Navy especially, needs to be prepared in order to help counter that.
Well, and they're running a race, right? They're running a race to get ready for it before they don't have the manpower to fight it, right? So if they don't get ready for it until 2037, they probably don't have the manpower that they absolutely need because of their birth rate. So if you look at it, you can almost take where the birth rate's declining and where they can possibly get ready, and somewhere those two lines cross each other in a formula, and you go, circle that, because that's their last chance to get this done. Right. And the other thing that makes me really, really nervous for Taiwan is when they keep announcing that we're building more semiconductors here in the United States, which is one of Taiwan's major contributions economically. Yeah. And it's like, what do they know? Right? If all of a sudden we're going to start building the plants here. Granted, the supply chain in 2020 completely got crushed, and that was one of the components, right? You could buy a car, and the dealer would tell you, hey, we don't have the backup camera, we don't have this, we don't have that. The car will run, and it will drive just like an old car, but when these chips come in, we'll put them in the car for you.
Wow.
Right? So I kind of look at all those things and go, man, I wouldn't want to be Taiwan right now.
Well, and I remember back and this is 14 years ago, the rare earth minerals and the deposits. And this is really, I think, an interesting case study about how environmentalism has, in many cases, it's helped, but it's gotten in the way of national defense, and it's gotten in the way of our economic development because the environmental lobby restricted the development of these deposits. So when I first heard about them, I thought, wow, rare earth, right? I mean, it's rare, operative word. No, we don't extract them from the earth. And so China has almost a monopoly, or they did, of those minerals. And so we've been trying to get those more online because those, to your point, they go into everything.
So the Chinese had until about 6 months ago, was the largest known deposits of these rare earth minerals. Somewhere out west, and I can't remember where it was, they found this massive deposit that I did the math on it, right? How much rare earth minerals you can extract every year out of this deposit at like current mining capabilities and techniques. And I think the deposit was good for 1,000 years.
Wow.
And you're like, you gotta go, okay, so maybe it's not that rare, one. And two, maybe we just need to start digging our own stuff, right? I mean, it was really amazing because they talked about how much of it was there, and you're like, okay, if we're only, you just do math, if we're only gonna extract so much a year, that's 1,000-year supply. You're like, I think I'll be on to something new by the time we exhaust this or get close to it.
And to bring it back to Trump, I think that's an area where when you look at those examples and you see how many times over the past 30 to 40 years, policies have been made that sacrifice national security or sacrifice our economic interests for some other good.
Yes.
And that is where there's been this disconnect and this breaking of trust. Not that we trust politicians, right? Not that we trust DC or trust, but there was a sense until the early 90s, the 90s, that, hey, like, we're on the ascent. They're looking out for us, that, protect the economy, protect the security. And then it has just, it kept getting chipped away. Obama just off the cliff, and then, and we've been into a position of really being able to see that, like, we need, every country looks at putting itself and its interests first. And while that doesn't mean that we only look after, but we need to make sure that we're protecting our values, because, Mike, politics abhors a vacuum. And so if you're in a position where you recede your strength, whether it's east of Suez for the Brits or us in Afghanistan, other powers will step in, and we're not going to like the way that they either interact with other states or primarily us.
Yes. I'd be very interested if in 10 or 15 years the Chinese are leaving Afghanistan. Right? It'd be very... They're going in. There's a vacuum. There's a lot of stuff there that they want.
Yes.
Mineral-wise and other things. So I'll be very curious how the Afghan people treat the Chinese soldiers when they roll in. And just going to be interesting to see that.
And I think you can look at Africa as a great example of how China does business, right? Mm-hmm. And this actually happened over in Sri Lanka as well. But particularly in Africa, they come in, China, hey, we'll give you these loans. It's going to be great. We'll build all these things. We need you to pay. It's ours now.
Yes.
Or hey, we're going to build a base here. Or hey,
yes,
we're gonna do this, and they just expand their influence, and they're relentless and they're ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but sometimes in international security, international politics, you need to have a focus on the interest. That doesn't mean you sacrifice everything for your end goal, but what it does mean is that you protect your interests, and for us, many times maybe it's not as full protection as it needs to be.
Well, I think I have said for a long time, somewhere in the 1950s or 60s and 70s when we opened up China. That was a huge mistake. We should have left China alone, right? We should have looked at where we needed resources from, which was people to build things for us. And we should have gone straight down the Americas, down to Central America and South America, and built plants and built factories where they had workers and built a middle class in those countries. We would have kept all of our supply chain in our own hemisphere for the most part. You still would have had to get things from other places. And we wouldn't have had migration issues because people didn't want to live in their country. And I look at that as one of the biggest failings of the 20th century of going, we'd like to buy everything from one of our enemies. What a horrible plan. What a horrible plan. In retrospect, right? We're going to open China up. We're going to make them democratic. And that was a bad plan. It was bad.
And to your point, that's an area that is overlooked in the immigration conversation. Is just that the immigrants are fleeing just desperate economic times. It doesn't make an excuse, but what it does say is that if they had better economies down in those countries and better security and stability, it would be a much different conversation.
Good luck in your deployment.
Thank you.
Send us notes if you can and let us know you're okay. We'll give updates on here.
Okay.
We're more than happy to do that. Hey, I made it. Things are going well, or whatever you want. Whatever you're allowed to send us.
Okay.
You got my number. Just text me. I'll be happy to give updates on all that.
Thank you.
So very happy for you serving.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that you're going to be away from your wife and kids, and good luck in the election.
Thank you, sir.
All right. This is the Mike Davis Show. We will be back tomorrow with Davey and Amanda. Are you here tomorrow?
Of course I'm here.
Okay. All right. Awesome. I just wanted to make sure. All right. See you guys
Bye.
later.